Today, the relentless spirit of Theodore Roosevelt and the Wolverine. Welcome back to Marvel America, the podcast where history meets heroism. This week, we're exploring the relentless spirit of two larger-than-life figures. Theodore Roosevelt, the bold reformer who charged through political and personal adversity, and Wolverine, the unyielding mutant who defies pain and loss to protect those he loves. These two titans remind us that resilience, even in the face of suffering, can lead to greatness. Picture the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a time of rapid industrialization, social inequality, and environmental challenges. In this era emerges Theodore Roosevelt, a man whose larger-than-life personality, bold reforms, and love for the natural world left an indelible mark on American history. Every hero has an origin story, and many of those heroes have a tragic beginning. Theodore Roosevelt falls into this category. He lost his wife and mother on the same day in 1884. This was a devastating event that profoundly shaped his character. Perhaps Theodore Roosevelt channeled this misery into his perseverance. As president, he championed progressive reforms, tackling corporate monopolies and advocating for workers' rights. Roosevelt established the national park system, protecting millions of acres of natural land for future generations. He was an environmental pioneer. Known for his big stick diplomacy, Roosevelt expanded America's influence on the global stage, including overseeing the construction of the Panama Canal. When I reflect on my past, I'm so grateful that I haven't experienced the extreme loss that Roosevelt experienced. But then I think, maybe that's why I sometimes consider myself mediocre, an underachiever. Wolverine's another example of a true hero who suffered immensely over his long, illustrious life. His story is one of endurance and redemption. Born as James Howlett in the 19th century, his journey spans decades. Let's go back to Wolverine's childhood. His abilities manifested after a traumatic event, and his healing factor allowed him to survive countless battles. The Weapon X program, for instance, Logan was forcibly experimented on, turning his skeleton into unbreakable adamantium, a process that gave him immense power but cost him his humanity. Despite his gruff exterior, Wolverine became a mentor and protector, guiding younger mutants and fighting for a world that often rejected him. If you're not totally familiar with Wolverine's origin, let me enlighten you. Logan was born in 1832 in Canada. Due to his healing factor, he ages much slower than a normal human, remaining physically in his prime for over a century. Although Logan appears to be about 30 to 40 years old, in reality, as of 2025, he'd be 193. Whenever I think about Wolverine aging at a slow pace, and Captain America for that matter, I start thinking about another question. What if we all could live forever? What impact would that have on us? Would we be less ambitious? Would we get depressed over time and just get sick of living the human experience? Or would an infinite amount of years cause us to seek new challenges and to always push forward and to grow more than we would in our current predicament? Let's talk about the flawed hero, because let's face it, no hero is perfect. They've all got faults. Roosevelt, for instance, he had resilience in the face of personal tragedy, and he overcame political opposition. This was legendary. However, his unrelenting drive sometimes led him to act impulsively, alienating allies and overreaching in his ambitions. I'll give you an example. Roosevelt's determination to build the Panama Canal led him to support Panamanian independence from Colombia in 1903. Without congressional approval, he orchestrated and supported a revolution in Panama by sending U.S. warships to deter Colombian forces and secure the canal zone. While the canal was ultimately a success, Roosevelt's unilateral action actually angered both domestic critics and international leaders who accused him of imperialism. That's a serious charge. Even some allies in Congress felt alienated by his bypassing of the legislative process. Another example. We've all heard of Roosevelt as the guy who spoke softly but carried a big stick. At times, though, this turned into acting brashly. His decision to send the Great White Fleet on a worldwide tour in 1907 was meant to showcase American naval power. However, it was an impulsive and costly move that strained the budget and antagonized nations like Japan, exacerbating tensions rather than resolving them. The outcome? While it did demonstrate U.S. power for sure, critics saw it as an unnecessary provocation and a misuse of resources, alienating some allies who viewed it as American overreach. I can relate to the concept of misusing resources. For instance, I bought my first Harley Davidson on credit while still in debt. Sure, it's given me years of riding pleasure, and it definitely looks cool, kind of like the White Fleet did for Roosevelt. And I still ride it today, and while I'm no longer in debt, I can admit it probably wasn't the most fiscally responsible decision I've ever made. Looking back, if I'm honest, maybe I could have used that money for something more meaningful over the years. But hey, sometimes the heart wins over the wallet. Wolverine definitely has his flaws as well. His healing factor allows him to endure physical suffering, but his emotional scars run deep. His isolation and difficulty trusting others often put him at odds with his teammates, even when fighting for the same cause. Wolverine's emotional scars and trust issues have frequently caused isolation and friction with his teammates, even when they shared the same mission. Let me give you some examples. Logan's horrific experience in the Weapon X program that I mentioned, where he was experimented on and had his memory wiped, left him with severe trust issues. His inability to fully remember his past often made him paranoid and reluctant to rely on others. For instance, he frequently questioned Professor X's motives, doubting whether the telepath was manipulating or not. Logan's skepticism and rough demeanor created tension with his teammates, who found his distrust and lone wolf attitude difficult to work with. Then there's his tough love approach to mentoring younger mutants like Jubilee and Kitty Pryde. This often stemmed from his fear of getting emotionally attached, only to lose them in battle. For example, his reluctance to fully embrace a father figure role with Jubilee came from the pain of losing others he cared for. While his mentorship style protected him from vulnerability, it also alienated those he was trying to help, creating emotional barriers between him and the younger teammates. While his mentorship style protected him from vulnerability, it actually alienated those he was trying to help, creating emotional barriers between him and the younger team members. In my years as an educator, I've leaned toward a tough love approach like Logan when mentoring younger students. This partly stems from a fear that showing too much warmth might be perceived as favoritism. While this approach works well for many students, I recognize that others may thrive with a more nurturing father figure style of guidance. On a personal level, I don't have children. A big part of that comes from an honest acknowledgement that I struggle with the idea of committing to a lifelong partner. Sacrificing my personal freedom and the ability to change jobs at will or pursue my own goals as I see fit feels like a trade-off that I haven't been ready to make. It's a delicate balance between being true to myself and navigating the responsibility of shaping young minds. I've been a lone wolf for a long time, nowhere near as long as Logan, but that is why I connect with this character, whether it's on the big screen or in the comics. It's one of the beautiful things that art can offer, that connection. It's time to burst that American bubble once again. Get a global perspective. What the heck was going on in the rest of the world when Roosevelt was leading us here at home in America? The Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. Roosevelt actually mediated the Treaty of Portsmouth. This earned him the Nobel Peace Prize for brokering peace between Russia and Japan. He mediated the treaty to end the Russo-Japanese War. While he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, his impulsive favoring of Japan in some aspects of the negotiations actually alienated Russia and created tensions that contributed to future conflicts in Asia. The overall outcome? Roosevelt's overly confident handling of the situation led to a perception that the U.S. was meddling in far-flung affairs, creating unease among European powers and skepticism at home about his interventionist diplomacy. Also during this time, we had European colonialism in Africa. While Roosevelt focused on conservation, European powers were carving up Europe in the scramble for Africa, influencing global politics and economies. This colonialism prioritized European profit and power at the expense of African humanity, dignity, and self-determination. The consequences of this exploitation continue to affect the continent, making it one of the most egregious chapters in global history. At this time, we had the emergence of global trade. The completion of the Panama Canal under Roosevelt's leadership revolutionized international trade, in fact, shortening travel time between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Hugely important for commerce. What about the global perspective when it comes to Wolverine? I mentioned he was born in 1832. Think about that. That means he's had to fight in multiple wars. There was the Great War, World War II, and Vietnam, all reflecting humanity's recurring struggles with violence and division. And Wolverine's at the center of each one of them. And then there's the civil rights. Of course, this parallels the X-Men's fight for mutant rights. On a lighter note, let's talk about pop culture when Roosevelt was president. Dime novels were popular. Tales of Wild West heroes captivated audiences. This actually reflected Roosevelt's fascination with rugged individualism. He did his time in the Wild West. It toughened him up. There were vaudeville shows. This was theatrical entertainment. They celebrated humor, music, and storytelling. These variety shows featured comedians, singers, dancers, magicians, and novelty acts. Stars like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin actually started their careers in vaudeville. This was the silent movie era. Nickelodeons were popular. What the heck were Nickelodeons? We've only heard that as a channel that people watch. No, Nickelodeons. These were short silent films shown in nickel theaters. This revolutionized entertainment. Iconic films of the day. D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Very controversial, but highly influential in establishing film as a powerful medium. This was a feature. Charlie Chaplin burst onto the scene. His The Tramp persona became a global phenomenon by the 1910s. The popular music of the era was ragtime. Artists like Scott Joplin, Maple Leaf Rag. That'll give you an idea of what it sounded like. And then, of course, sports. Baseball stars like Ty Cobb became household names. Fighters like Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion of boxing, were at the center of the cultural conversations, often intersecting with issues of race. Famous authors of the day, Mark Twain, Edith Wharton, and Jack London, were at the height of their influence. In breaking-edge technology, phonographs and records. That's right. The phonograph brought music into the homes, making popular tunes more accessible. And then there was the rise of the automobile. Yes, Henry Ford's Model T was mass-produced and made it accessible to average Americans throughout the country. And it was during this time that the spread of electric lighting and appliances transformed homes and businesses, impacting leisure and entertainment. If you're into fashion, look up the Gibson Girl. This idealized feminine image was popularized by illustrator Charles Dana Gibson. It represented the beauty and independence of modern women. Go ahead, research it. Check out some of the wardrobes. And then men, what were they wearing? Suits with high collars and bowler hats were in vogue for the men. You ready for trivia? Let's do it. Remember, I'm going to read each of the 10 questions. I'm going to pause briefly in between each so you can think about it. And then I'll read them again with the answers, and you can see how you did. What is Wolverine's real name? What is the name of the stuffed toy that was named after Theodore Roosevelt? What metal is bonded to Wolverine's skeleton? Theodore Roosevelt is known for his role in the Progressive Era in conservation efforts. Which U.S. president of the same last name led the country during the Great Depression and World War II? Most of us associate Wolverine as a member of the X-Men. What team did he lead in the Marvel Universe? Which act established the national park system under Roosevelt? What is the name of Wolverine's arch nemesis? What war made Roosevelt a national hero? In what comic did Wolverine first appear? What physical ailment did Roosevelt overcome as a child? All right, time for the answers. See how you did. What is Wolverine's real name? This we covered in the episode. James Howlett. What is the name of the stuffed toy that was named after Theodore Roosevelt? The teddy bear. Yes, this is true. In 1902, during a hunting trip in Mississippi, President Theodore Roosevelt was invited by locals to hunt black bears. After a long and unsuccessful hunt, Roosevelt's guides captured a small injured black bear and tied it to the tree. They suggested Roosevelt shoot it to claim a trophy. Roosevelt refused, considering it unsportsmanlike and cruel. However, he did order that the bear be put down humanely to end its suffering. Inspired by this story, a Brooklyn-based candy shop owner and his wife created a stuffed toy bear and displayed it in their shop window, labeling it Teddy's Bear. The toy was an immediate hit, and the couple went on to mass produce it, founding the Ideal Toy Company. Now that's a cool story. What metal is bonded to Wolverine's skeleton? Adamantium. Theodore Roosevelt is known for his role in the Progressive Era and conservation efforts. Which U.S. president of the same last name led the country during the Great Depression and World War II? That would be Franklin D. Roosevelt. What team did Wolverine lead in the Marvel Universe? X-Force. Which act established the national park system under Roosevelt? The Antiquities Act of 1906. What is the name of Wolverine's arch nemesis? Sabretooth. What war made Roosevelt a national hero? The Spanish-American War. But why? On July 1st, 1898, Roosevelt led a daring charge up Kettle Hill. This displayed his personal bravery. He charged ahead on horseback, rallying his men despite the danger. His bold actions contributed significantly to the U.S. victory in the battle, which became a turning point in the war. The imagery of Roosevelt and the Rough Riders heroically charging into battle captivated the American imagination, as you can imagine, and was widely reported in the press. In what comic did Wolverine first appear? If you've ever read it, it's an awesome book. The Incredible Hulk, number 180. What physical ailment did Roosevelt overcome as a child? Asthma. There you go. Now it's time to match that quote. I'm going to give you two quotes. One is from Roosevelt, the other from Wolverine. You determine who delivered which quote. Here's the first one. Do what you can with what you have where you are. And here's the second one. I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice. Once again, here's the first one. Do what you can with what you have where you are. That was Theodore Roosevelt. In one of Wolverine's most iconic quotes, I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice. And here's another couple of great quotes. This one, of course, is iconic from Theodore Roosevelt. Speak softly and carry a big stick. And here's another one from Wolverine. We all got both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. I'm going to end the episode by giving you something to think about. A Socratic question. Here's the first one. This one is about the Panama Canal construction. Here's the scenario. What would you do? In the early 1900s, Roosevelt wanted to build the Panama Canal, a project that would transform global trade but faced immense challenges, including political resistance, health risks, and disease like malaria, and ethical concerns about U.S. interference in Panama's independence from Colombia. The question I pose to you is, if you were Theodore Roosevelt, would you proceed with supporting a revolution in Panama to secure a canal zone, knowing it could set a precedent for U.S. interventionism? Or would you respect Colombia's sovereignty and risk delaying or losing the canal project altogether? All right, let's put you in the place of Wolverine. Here's the scenario. In the Dark Phoenix saga, Wolverine faced the moral dilemma of killing Jean Grey to stop the Phoenix Force, an uncontrollable cosmic power that could destroy the universe. Jean begged him to do it to save everyone. If you were Wolverine, would you kill someone you deeply cared for to save billions of lives, knowing it would haunt you forever? Or would you refuse, hoping for another solution and risking catastrophe? That'll keep your mind busy for a while. Thanks for joining me again. Theodore Roosevelt, Wolverine, both heroes that teach us life's greatest challenges often forge the strongest leaders. Roosevelt's grit and Wolverine's resilience remind us to rise above pain and doubt, using our scars to make the world a better place. Here's your call to action. How can you channel Roosevelt's determination or Wolverine's unbreakable spirit? Take on the challenges in your life with courage, and remember that resilience can lead to greatness. I love you.